Hello and welcome to the first After Effects CS6 tutorial hosted by myself, AcrezHD. In today's tutorial we're going to be taking a look at one of the fantastic new features of After Effects CS6, which is Ray Traced 3D, which allows us to extrude 3D text or shape objects within After Effects. So let's take a look at our preview on what we're going to be creating today. And believe it or not, this was created 100% in After Effects. So you can see we have a real 3D text, we have reflection, we have an environment, we have 3D optical flares. So this is a very exciting tutorial today, so let's go ahead and get started. The first step, I'm going to open up a new composition. And we're going to set this to 720p, 30 frames per second, and we'll make it 5 seconds long. Okay, so we're going to start by creating the text and then extruding the text. So we're going to come up to Layer, New, Text, and I'm going to type in CS6 just for example. The font that I'm using is called Commando. Once again, it's a free font that you can Google and download. So now that we have our text object in there, what we need to do is make it 3D by selecting the 3D box just here. And then once we make it 3D, you can see we get a little button on the composition right hand side called Renderer Ray Traced 3D, and if you select that and then come up to Options, this allows us to change the quality of the Ray Traced 3D. Currently I have it set at 1, and that's because it allows us to work really fast, whereas if you've got it on something maybe like 9 or 10, it's going to really slow your machine down. So work on 1 or 2 when you're just working with it, and then once you're ready to render, maybe bump it up to 9 or 10, or maybe just 5, something a little bit higher than that. So make sure that your ray trace quality is set on 1, and then just hit OK. And then what we can do, we can drop down the attributes of the text, and we have 2 new options here, which is geometry options and material options. If we drop down the geometry options, you're going to see that we have bevel depth, hole bevel depth, and extrusion depth. We're going to change the extrusion depth to around 100. Now you're not going to see a major change just yet, but we're going to change the bevel style to convex, and we're also going to change the bevel depth to around 3. So you can't really see that much at the moment because you haven't got any lights or shadows in there at the moment, but we're going to get there. So the next step is to maybe create the lights. So if we come up to Layer, New, Light, the first light that I'm going to add is a parallel light. The intensity around 50%, cast shadow, shadow darkness around 200, fall off none, and then just hit OK. And then maybe move it over just a little bit to the right hand side. We're going to add another light, so Layer, New, Light. We're going to make this one a spotlight, intensity 50, shadow darkness 200, and shadow diffusion is around 100. And then just hit OK. And we're also going to add one more light, so Layer, New, Light, and this one's going to be a ambient light. And the ambient light just kind of gives a nice sort of global light to it, rather than having loads of individual spotlights. We're just going to add an ambient light, and that's going to brighten things up a little bit. The next step is to create a new camera, and you can choose any preset that you want, but I'm going to be using a 15mm camera, and this is going to give us a really sort of wide angle sort of fisheye effect. And then once you've selected your preset, you just want to hit OK. And then if we hit C on the keyboard, that's going to allow us to rotate around the camera like so. And also if you hit C again, you can move the text around like so, and if you hit it one more time, you can zoom in and out. So the keyboard shortcut for the camera movements is just C, so all you have to do is keep hitting C and cycle through. So the next step is to add the environment, and I've got an image here. If I just drop that into the composition, you can see this is a wallpaper that I've had on my computer for quite a while now. But I thought it would be interesting to try and use some real photographs to see what the reflections will look like, etc. And bear in mind, this is a wallpaper, so it's quite a large image. So if you're looking for an image to use as an environment, you're best off looking for maybe a wallpaper size sort of photo, so you can, the photo isn't too small. So what we're going to do with this image dropped in here now is we're going to select the photo, and we're going to right click, and we're going to select environment layer. And as you can see, that creates it into a 3D spherical image that surrounds the entire text. So if I just hit C on the keyboard, you can see we can rotate around the entire text now with the environment layer as well. But a thing just to bear in mind is you can see we have you can see where the two images meet. That's not a major issue, so you can just spin around this way maybe. But bear in mind that you will have a crease on your image at the back there. Okay, so now what we're going to do is take a look at the material options for the 3D text. What we're going to do, we're going to select the text object and then drop down the attributes. We can close up the geometry options, and we can open up the material options, and you can see we have a wide range of material options that we can change, but the main one that we're going to be focusing on today is reflection intensity. So you just want to turn that up to 100, and that's just to show you the reflections. Obviously you don't want to go all the way up to 100, maybe something around 50 would work nice. There we go. So you can see we're starting to get some real reflections on our text now. You can also change the specular intensity, the specular shininess. There's reflection sharpness, but we're going to do something a little bit different to get some nice depth of field in there. We'll get onto that in a sec. But feel free to play around with the material options. There's a whole load of stuff that you can play around with. So if I just hit C on the keyboard now, that allows us to rotate around the text like so. And you can see that even as we move, the reflections start to move as well. So this is looking pretty good so far. The next step would be to create sort of a fake depth of field effect, and we can do that by selecting our environment layer and then coming up to effect, and we want blur and sharpen and camera lens blur. What this is going to do, this is going to blur the background like so, but not only is it going to blur the background, it's also going to blur the reflections on the text as well, so we get some nice soft reflections as well. What we're going to do now is add some 3D optical flares. Now don't worry if you haven't got optical flares, it's not a necessity, it's just going to spice things up a little bit. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to come up to layer, new, adjustment layer, and then we're going to come up to effect, video copilot, optical flares, and we're going to change the render mode to over original. And just for the moment I'm going to hide the camera just so we're facing the text on the front, and then come back to our adjustment layer. We're going to rename the adjustment layer optical flare, and we're going to come up to the options of the optical flares, and you can choose whichever one you wish. I think I'm going to go with the red triangles. And I'm just going to put the position somewhere around here maybe. And what we're going to do, we're going to change the source type from 2D to 3D. And if we turn our camera back on now and we hit C on the keyboard to rotate around the text, you can see that we have a 3D optical flare in place as well. And what we could do is drop down the attributes for the camera, transform, and we set a keyframe for the position, and then move forward maybe to 2 seconds, and then we're just going to rotate around the text like so. And there we are. It's as easy as that. So I hope you enjoyed today's tutorial. I hope you learned something new about Ray Trace 3D. Stay tuned for more After Effects CS6 tutorials. So thanks for watching everyone. Don't forget to comment, rate and subscribe, and I will see you again very soon in another video.